Hey everybody, welcome back to the Game Boys podcast. This time the Game Boy is on the PS3. I'm joined by Hippo as usual.
Game Boys.
So we're staying in the same console generation as we were in last time, where we talked about the Wii, which I believe the PS3 was the last console of this generation, right? It was like Xbox 360, Wii, then PS3, I think.
Yeah, I vaguely remember Xbox being early, but I don't know.
Xbox was definitely mad early. Because they were kind of flipping the script on what it had been the previous time, which had been PS2, GameCube, Xbox. I think Xbox went, okay, our problem was we got in too late. Let's be the first. So they rushed their console out the door, which is why it had so many problems. But we'll talk about that in its own episode if we do it. But today, PlayStation 3, this is a console I know for you kind of represents the end of you caring about modern games.
It is the console where I fell out of love of playing modern games and getting excited about new things. Because it's always been like PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. The first, second console is like, oh, this is a pattern. The next one's going to be also fun, and this one wasn't, to me anyway.
It's interesting for me to hear that, because for me as a kid, I didn't have much like in the way of new games. Like on the N64, which was my first console, we always just rented whatever they kind of had at the store. You know, I was buying stuff mostly late. I got the console a little bit late. Never had a PS1. And then in the when I got really into video games on the PS2, it was like I got it 4 years late and was catching up on everything, you know. So like for me, I didn't play Ratchet and Clank till the second one had already been out for a while, you know. Sly Cooper 2 was coming out, which is why I bought the first game. Like all those I found out about later. The PS3 was the first console in my household that we had, and like we had enough money, like mostly Victor played a hell of a lot of PS3, that he could actually like buy a new game when it came out. So like for me, this was the start of seeing new games in the house all the time, and for you it was the end. So yeah. I think that'll be, but I think in spite of that big difference, both of us probably didn't play that much PS3 ourselves.
Looking over the games I have, I think I've played a lot more than I remember. Because I usually think of like the PS3 as the downfall of the franchises that I liked and the replacement of them with less interesting franchises. When it comes to like going from console to console, I didn't really play Sly Cooper or Crash Bandicoot, but I did know, like I played them at a friend's house. So I didn't know how good they were, and when I got the ones on PS2, which are like universally not as good, I played them thinking that they were the way Spyro and Crash was supposed to be. So I didn't know that a franchise going to the next console would be a bad idea. And with Ratchet and Clank and everything, I mean, Jak and Daxter didn't even go over, but like the things I liked and was looking forward to, they were just not as good across the board.
Right, and they were sort of replaced with, like, with those franchises. We had Spyro, the people who made Spyro, Insomniac, would go on to make Ratchet and Clank, and then on the PS3 they just kind of kept making Ratchet and Clank. But then they also, did they have a second? Yeah, they had Resistance: Fall of Man.
Oh my god!
So
never heard of that.
gritty shooter game. Then you've got the guys who made Crash Bandicoot make Jak and Daxter, another, cartoon platformer game. Then they go and make Uncharted, which is sort of a gritty shooter game. And the people who made Sly Cooper then made Infamous, which is sort of a gritty sandbox game. So like basically all the companies who had been known for being like second-party developer, they work exclusively for Sony consoles, at least they did, in the previous generations, suddenly are making completely different styles of game, and this definitely threw you off. I mean, it threw me off too. I was a big fan of Ratchet and Clank, didn't care about Infamous. I mean, Resistance. The only one I got into was Uncharted, and I hadn't even been that big a Jak and Daxter fan personally, so, it was sort of different for me, but
It was
I
mostly
completely understand that.
the homogenization of like characters that could be in games. Like it was mostly the Ratchet and Clank was really the only one. I think they did eventually make a Sly Cooper game, but like it was all like, let's show off the hardware, let's render a realistic human face, because, you know, that works. We can do that now. We can have like textures on water and flashy light things, and that's where they're pushing all of the resources. So
The
every
PS3
game
was
looks
the last...
it looks like it's real. It looks like you could touch those people's hair, sniff it, great. But you know,
the PS3 was to me the last time that graphics were impressive, like a graphical leap was going to be like a major, because it was a huge deal. Like when the PS3 was coming out, I mean, this whole console generation, aside from the Wii, the 360 and the PS3 were pushing this new level of graphical fidelity, and the PS3 especially, like that was what all the advertising was around, was that this was the powerhouse machine. Like this is why it took longer to come out. This is why it was a bigger deal, because it was so fucking powerful. And like I remember my tech friend who was hype about the PS3 telling me that it was literally a supercomputer. That was how he described it to me. So we're talking about a console that's taking things to a whole new place, but yeah, the result of that is everyone's going to be kind of pressured to make games that take advantage of that. And we're on Blu-ray discs now, so we've got all this extra space. We've got just games. I feel like this is the moment where there was kind of a mid-sector of games that fell out. This is where we began the giant fjord between like the indie games and the AAA that's slowly closing now. The gap is closing back up because of PC gaming, but like it was this sensation of when you look at the PS2 library, there's like countless random, like, you know, there might be a 2D game on there. There might be a game that just looks fucking weird, or just something that has nothing to do with pushing the PS2 hardware. It was just every conceivable game was on there. And then you get to the PS3, and it's like every game had to be a big genre graphics pushing blockbuster.
It's where I've really, I mean, maybe it's just because of I grew up a bit and I started hearing things, like YouTube was around and I started hearing games journalism for the first time and understanding that there are game developers and there are publishers and there are companies and stuff. But it's where the whole like money aspect of the industry aspect of video games was very much like I was aware of it, and it's sort of, and you know, a lot of games had multiplayer, and games were going from being, you know, they still had couch co-op, but a lot of things were like, I remember there was this game which advertised that you could play online with 200 people at a time. I think it was
Massive action game.
Yeah. And I think I have that. I think I've played it, but
there's no couch 2-player.
Yeah, it's just a game where you play online, and I didn't like that.
That was weird for me too, because we're both guys with 2 younger brothers. So for us, like, couch multiplayer has always been a staple of the household, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
For you as well. Like,
it's especially bad because you know, you go on the internet on any of these Generation 7, I think, consoles, you fight against people who actually play the game all the time and are really good, and they're not your little brother, and you can't beat them easily because you know how to fuck them over. It ruins that whole aspect.
It makes everything competitive instead of just playing with your friends.
Yeah.
You know, or playing, because for me, multiplayer games are something I maybe card out once a couple months. You know, like most multiplayer games are ones I'm still playing to this day. I still card out the GameCube to play Smash Bros. Melee with my friends, or Mario Power Tennis with my friends. You know, a game that I have to play online, it's like there's this couple of months window where the game is highly active online and everyone's playing and everyone's very serious and competitive and you're way into it. But like, if you just want to play it every once in a while, the game's useless. Like Massive Action game, no one's playing that anymore. So the game is literally, there's no game. It was online only, you know? So like, the ability to just be able to play with your friends 10 years later, something I valued so much, that completely disappeared. And yeah, it's left a lot of this. It's definitely ironic that I'm going like 3 console generations back to play games with my friends because there's nothing to play on the PS3, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, I have a bit of a story about like the thing that really got me to buy a PS3, because I was skeptical about it, but you know, I was kind of excited, but you know, really it was just that I didn't want my parents to spend money, because I always felt guilty for that, because they always bought things, and you know, I am shrewd with money because you know, for various reasons. I don't like asking for things for Christmas and stuff. But they got it for me after I asked, because everyone at school was playing this new game, Call of Duty, and in primary school, there's primary school and secondary school in England, and the transition obviously to a new school, a lot of people didn't go over. There's new people, and I didn't know how to make friends, and nobody was playing PS2 anymore. I couldn't talk about Ratchet and Clank. I had to get with the new kids and get with the Call of Duty. And I got that, and I didn't end up like really doing much with it aside from learning what it was so that I could join in conversations and start socializing a bit. But the game itself made me so angry because I was so bad at it, because everyone was just...
Everyone's ludicrously good because they all play for 100...
Every single day after school, it's like the thing they do, and I could never get it.
My friend who I was describing, who was hype about the PS3, he was really into Modern Warfare when it came out, and he had logged a month of playtime, like a month of actual in-game time, and he was on the leaderboards. He was like within like the top 200 in the country. Like, I never got into the game that much because, you know, which at least that game did have couch multiplayer, and I played some of that with him and my brothers. But like, that was the only way I ever played that game. I never was willing to play online because I'd watch people be so like watching my friend play. He would literally shoot people before I realized they were existing. You know, like there'd be a guy dead before I processed that a guy was on screen, and I'm like, I can't play a game with people like this in it, you know?
Yeah. It's really just the fast-paced sort of reaction, like the 360 no-scoping that everyone used to do, that I used to actually watch videos of a little bit to be like, how I want to be good, I want to be cool with the guys at school, but nobody, I don't know how to do this. It's just, I couldn't even play with my brothers, because I would get so mad that I would yell and they would get scared and they would leave, and I was like, oh.
I think the PS3 was I think the first infamous console launch with no games, like, which is what Gen 8 was entirely. The upcoming the Wii U, Xbox One, and PS4, which all launched with no games and are only just now, like this year, finally have games. But the PS3 was the first one that, like, it came out and everyone was just like, okay, we've got like Uncharted. When will we get another game? You know, and it was like that for a little while. It was around the time that games started coming out for the thing that we picked it up in my house. And originally, we were going to get it as part of a scheme, because some guy my dad works with was planning to, like, buy 4 of them on, like, launch night and, like, resell them online. And he was going to have us stand in line for it and stuff, but then he, like, flaked out. So we didn't end up getting one till, like, a year later or so. That was a weird time, like, because it was one of those consoles that everyone thought was going to be rare, and it was like people were really hyped for it, but like from a technology standpoint, like, because it was such a powerful machine, more so I think than that they were excited about the games.
It makes me the fact that this is like the first. Well, I guess it's not the first console to have different iterations, because the PS2 had a slim version, but it was still just the same PS2. Right. PS3 got rid of the first model could play PS2 games and PS1 games, and the version I got couldn't do that, and my parents didn't know that because, you know, they just bought it, and I didn't know that because I didn't look it up, but it really made me upset that they would even that could even be done.
I didn't know it could play PS2.
The very first model could, but they got rid of that functionality because it was expensive.
But it could still play PS1 afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was weird. It was a weird, that was like the first completely not backwards compatible system, like because it was when we say original model, we mean like that stopped being for sale. Like it's like because every console has had like there's the fat and then there's the slim, but like they usually both are around. This was like, no, you can't come by the one that can play PS2 games.
I wouldn't even mind if you couldn't get like the fat version anymore, because the slim version was exactly the same. It was just smaller. Like there was no reason to need the fat one. But with the PS3, suddenly you're fucked sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just started a terrible precedent that I hate now, where you have to rebuy games all the time if you want to play them.
It's a fucking pain in the ass. And, or you just have to keep all your consoles on you at all times.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And have a fucking
eventually they're all going to break, and I'm going to have to spend so much money trying to get new ones, or eBay and stuff.
I mean, honestly, I've repurchased like every console several times at this point, so I'm just used to the idea of like, yeah, I'm gonna go spend $60 on a 12-year-old console because I want to play this one game for 2 minutes, you know, that I've got an itch for. But but we've been painting a kind of grim picture of the PS3, and maybe it stayed that way for you. But in my house, the PS3 became the primary driver console because once the game started coming out, it actually developed a pretty good library, and more importantly, the PS3 version of a game was almost always better than the Xbox 360 version. And so because we had a 360, but the 360 would break all the fucking time. We went through 4 360 consoles, and it had less processing power. So like, we would always hear online like, hey, if a game's on multiple consoles, buy the PS4 version. You know, it'll run better. It won't be on 3 discs like the 360 version, and your console will probably live to see tomorrow. So, like I think probably like if you combined everyone's collection in my house, I actually think the PS3 has the most games that were in our house, period. Because this is when Victor became a hardcore gamer, so...
Yeah, I think, like, we never really had that many games for the PS3, but there's quite a few good ones that I had forgotten about. Red Dead Redemption is, like, a standout. Like, Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4 and 5. And LA Noire, like those are the games where like the realism,
all the Rockstar games,
where they're just a good company. I love Rockstar. They took the whole idea of making things realistic, and they applied it to places where it would be like pretty cool. Like LA Noire is a great game, and I enjoy picking things up and rotating them a lot.
Yeah, I've literally never played a Rockstar game.
Well, not a single one.
Not a single one. Oh. Not even for like a minute. I've watched like dozens of hours of people playing GTA, but and Red Dead, but I never played one.
It's like the open world, like they did it perfectly the first time, and who's ever made an open world game has missed the crucial element of being able to fuck around for hours not actually playing the game. Like most open worlds, you got leveling up and you got stuff you can be doing, menial little tasks here and there. But Rockstar games were all about a world where a game takes place, but you don't have to play it if you don't want to. Like one of my favorite things to do in LA Noire was not do the missions. Actually, it's like a stupid game me and my brothers came up with, where one player would be driving the car around the city, and the other two would be shouting directions, and they would be like just trying to drive and not kill anyone. And obviously lots of people died, and it was great. And there's funny physics in LA Noire as well, where you could just shove people over and they would drop their hat, because it's a game set in the 20s or the 40s or something. And everyone's got a hat, and you can punch them in the face and their hat will fly off. But it's all like realistic, so it's funnier than it would have been on PS2. So, like, that's really what I like about the realism, is that when you hurt people in an open-world game, in a Rockstar game, it feels like you're actually doing real crime, and it feels great.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking about it, and I think what ultimately made the PS3 a great console is the fact that that generation was the longest console generation. Like, they were making games for these consoles for fucking ever. And so eventually, like, I think the PS3 library, you know, it started off weak, and like for the first year or two, you could easily make the argument like, oh, there's no games on the PS3. Oh, it's like it's kind of a clunky pain in the ass because the thing's fucking huge, and I always hated the BIOS screen, you know, like the shit before you play a game.
Oh, the home menu.
Yeah, I never really got used to the home menu.
Yeah, it's always been a bit like weird. I don't know.
I never understood it or knew how to navigate it or like anything like that until like when the PS4 came along. Like that one, somehow they changed it in such a way that now I get it. You know, like, because I love fucking around on my PS4. Like I could sit around and fucking scroll through menus all day. And it's really satisfying. But on the PS3, I fucking hated that shit.
When the menus feel good, the console feels good.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. That's a Devu line, right?
Yeah.
Or a bastardization of a Devu line. But yeah, just like by the sheer virtue of how long the PS3 was there, like, because I think about how, again, Victor played so many more PS3 games than me, but like even I'm looking at the catalog and I'm like, God, I played so many fucking games on this console because it was just out forever, you know?
How many years was it out? Was it more than a decade?
No. It came out in, I want to say, well, let's look it up. I've got Wikipedia right here, so I might as well just get it right. It came out in 2006, that's what I thought, and it was relevant till, I mean, it's kind of still relevant. Like, there's still some games that, like, get brought out for both PS3 and PS4, but, like, yeah, it lasted a good, like, probably 7 or 8 years. So, it's funny to think about because it doesn't feel as long because when we were kids, the space between two console generations felt like a whole lifetime. You know, like the amount of time between the N64 and the GameCube felt like this enormous massive time, but it was like 4 years. You know,
well, yeah,
N64,
I mean, for me, I'd never really experienced a new generation before the PlayStation 3 came out because it was like I didn't jump on with the PlayStation 1 before the PlayStation 2. They were just both around, and I got the PlayStation 1 first. Or maybe I just never knew that the PlayStation 2 wasn't around. I just at some point I saw an advert for it or something.
Right.
So I was never really aware of like the time it took for a new one to come out until I had noticed that the PlayStation 3 had been around for a very long time, and I didn't like it still. I was like, when are they going to make the PlayStation 2 too?
I think, for me, because so much of the PS3's lifespan was a time where I wasn't really into games, I really became acquainted with how good it had always been in more recent times. Because, I mean, first of all, what is probably both of our favorite game franchise ever comes from this fucking console.
The Dark Demon Blood?
Yeah, so to start with, let's get into some specific games. Demon Souls.
Yes.
So I knew about Demon Souls from the beginning because my friend Don-san, who I've been talking about this whole time, the hype PS3 boy, he was a huge Armored Core fan. He knew about From Software. He knew this developer, and he was watching like all these videos of the Japanese version of Demon Souls, and he would tell us about it all the time. He'd show us all these videos. He was so hype about it. So like we got that game on launch day, and it was him and my brother Victor and their friend Brando, and they all played through it. They were all like way into it, and I would sit around and watch them. And I tried to play it myself, but didn't get very far. I was one of those who, like, you know, I beat 1-1, and then I couldn't really beat any of the other levels after that, so I kind of gave up. And then when Dark Souls came out, because Demon Souls had reviewed extremely well, you know, GameSpot had made it their Game of the Year it came out, like, even though not a lot of people bought the game, it was sort of heralded as this really small cult classic. Then Dark Souls came out and they just put a lot more advertising behind it, really focused on this aspect of like, this game will kill you. I think that was a good thing to do right at the time when Let's Plays were becoming mainstream, and like it just woke this beast and everyone cared about it within about a year, you know. So yeah, Dark Souls suddenly took off as this big franchise, and everyone liked that game even more than Demon Souls. And like, it's fucking crazy to think, you know, Dark Souls 1, like Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2 were all PS3 era games, you know, like starting from like midway through the console's lifespan.
Yeah, Demon Souls completely passed me by. I had no idea about it. Really, the thing that got me into that whole thing was your Let's Play with Victor of Dark Souls. It got me interested in the idea, because I'd heard about it. I was like, I don't care, whatever. I think Dark Souls 2 was out by the time I played Dark Souls for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. If it was from our Let's Play, like, they would have both been out for a while. Yeah, like, it was a really big deal in my household for a very long time. Like, Demon Souls was, like, the favorite game of my friends by the time Dark Souls came out, and that was just, like, an obsession, you know? Like, my brother Shade played it, like, fucking dozens of times. Him and my friend Donson would just play through the game over and over and over again. And then I eventually, it took me until Bloodborne came out to finally like get into playing them, but I was obsessed with the games just from watching them. Like, Dark Souls was my favorite game before I'd ever gotten past the Gaping Dragon in Dark Souls. Well, actually, I'd gotten to Blighttown. That was where I'd stopped before Bloodborne came out. But yeah, pretty important franchise, I'd say. You're a huge fan at this point.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite franchise as well. And it's done. It's over.
PS3 gave us that. Then we've got what's a PS3 game that you
Little Big
love?
Planet. We both have history with that, I think. That was like the one colorful game that I saw like coming near the beginning of the console.
Mascot platformer from early PS3 era. Yeah, that was another one Donson was hype about because of that was one, when they were first releasing the trailers for that game, we really thought this was going to be a game where you can do literally anything. Like, you're going to be able to make a fucking game in this game. And then once it came out, we were all kind of into it, but like building levels was such a pain in the ass that like no one got super
it was
into
so really it's tedious to just I have an idea for a platforming challenge, but I got to make the floor and the walls and put it into choosing a material out of these hundreds of I don't know what material to use. Fuck, I can't think of anything. You just throw shit on there, and then you get bored because it doesn't look really good.
I mean, by that point in my life, I had spent a lot of time in RPG Maker. Like, I had built RPG Maker games, and that's what I kind of expected and hoped it would be, is like, you just pick a tile and you lay down the tiles, but it was like a weird pain-in-the-ass version of that. Like, I don't know.
The cursor didn't move fast enough across the screen at all.
Yeah, that was also... Yeah, everything about it was like, they stopped short of making it right. The only person I knew who got super into it was my brother Shade, who would just make impossible levels, and then fucking beg you to play them, and then you'd play it and you go, Shade, you just made a troll level, it's impossible. And he'd be like, yeah, and we were like, God fucking damn it. I'll fucking kill you. He was like probably 7 at the time. My
littlest brother also got really into making levels, and when Little Big Planet 2 came out, and it had like the computer chip thing with like the special XOR and OR gate. Yeah, he played and made some really advanced shit, which is probably why he's now a literal game programmer. Like, he's really smart with that stuff.
That's the shit I always hoped, like, would happen, because there were a lot of tutorials for how to do that stuff, and, like, I remember seeing the guy who built a functioning graphing calculator in Little Big Planet, and, like, when he shows you the network of stuff he made, it's, like, this insane screen-filling amount of gates in order to create this calculator, you know, and, Yeah, that shit would blow my mind. The same thing happened in Minecraft, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, Shade was big into both, but like I don't think he ever quite learned how to do the super advanced stuff. But like that was when I looked at that, I was like, man, I hope this teaches kids how to be game designers and programmers and stuff, because that's what the same. I also felt that about Rock Band, which here get into another PS3 thing, because PS2 had the Guitar Hero games, which my family was really big into Guitar Hero, and then with the PS3, by that point, Guitar Hero was starting to wane a little bit, I think, in popularity. Guitar Hero 4 was like not as good, and this is when they started doing all the weird like single artist games that no one cared about. But then we had Rock Band, which introduces a drum kit and microphone and all these other peripherals. So we had that, and Shade became like god tier at the drums on that game. Like he would play expert mode drums on Rock Band all the time, and I was like, man, if we could just find a way to just like have one of these screens in front of a real drum kit with the color coding, like he could play a song, you know, like if he learned sheet music, he could just, it's the same thing. It's playing music just abstracted into something that's easy on the eyes, but like, you know, he tried to get into drumming for a little while. We actually bought him an electronic drum kit for Christmas. My parents did, I mean, but he ended up becoming a digital music guy instead.
Yeah, Rock Band was something that passed me by, mostly because you would see it in the store, and my dad would always like, God, Jesus, look at the price tag on this, all this stupid bullshit, and I'm like, oh, I guess not. I guess we're not getting that one. And then I didn't really
reasonable opinion.
Yeah, and I didn't have...
I mean, I felt that way too.
I didn't go to friends' houses who had it, so I never got to play that. I always wanted to try the drums, but I had been fond of Guitar Hero in PS2, and I think that led to me actually playing guitar for real. So I think that does work, the whole Rock Band thing.
I think so too, especially if you're particularly young. Like, I think people who get into the games, like me, I got okay at Guitar Hero, but like I could never get great at it, and to me it was like too different from guitar. But like when I would watch Shade play the drums, like, because what it proved to me is he has hand-eye coordination, which I don't, like, or and like foot coordination. I can never, my problem as a drummer is I can't coordinate my hands and feet together. Shade could do that, and I was like with a guitar, there's obviously way more going on with it than just 5 buttons. But with the drums, there's not really that much more. Like, you're basically actually playing the drums of this song some of the time, you know, when you're on expert mode. So I really felt like this is the same skill set. If you can just translate this, you can literally play drums. But again, it didn't really pan out for Shade, at least. But it panned out for you, so that's good. And for your brother playing Little Big Planet.
Yeah.
I keep glancing over to my PS3 games, but like I don't have that many, and most of them are either shit I haven't really played or stuff that's not even mine. But it's interesting what games kind of, because a lot of like PC games got ported to PS3, which it used to be that PC games coming to consoles back in the old days, like you would always hear, you know, the PC version is vastly superior for this and that, like you need mouse control and stuff like that. This was the era where the difference between PC and console wasn't that strong. Like, I think there was much more crossover between PC, like games getting released on both, which now, like, any third-party game gets released on everything. But like, I played, for instance, Portal 2 on the PS3.
Oh yeah, Valve stuff.
Yeah, in fact, both, I think, because I think my friend Donson had the orange box on PS3, and I'd watched him play Portal 1, and then I have Portal 2, so, you know, that was a great couch co-op game that you could play for a night.
I really feel like I need to get, like, TF2 for PS3, just because I've heard that since it's been, box. Yes, it's been, like, preserved in its intended state. They haven't reduced the graphics, they haven't added all the stupid hats, it's just a good game still. like I've seen actual comparisons of like TF2 how it used to be.
Are people still playing it though?
Well, I don't know about that. I'd play against bots. I mean, it is a PS3 game, so it would be janky.
Oh, if it has bots, then that's dope.
But yeah, but like I've seen comparisons where like due to over the years having to add so many more models and hats and stuff to the game that the game itself has just less graphical fidelity. Like even on max settings, the max settings have been reduced over time, and it's really gross. TF2 sucks.
That's a shame. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, cool PS3 game, and I mean, I remember when there was this 1-2 punch that happened in 2008 that was like the moment when, to me, like, I wasn't playing these games, but like it seemed as though gaming had entered a new phase when GameSpot gave a 10 out of 10 to both Metal Gear Solid 4 and Grand Theft Auto 4, because they both came out about the same time. And it was like, these were two games that were like pushing the envelope into a whole new like realm of what games could do. And with GTA 4, it was just the scope and size of it, like the sheer number of things you could do in the game, the size of the world, like it was just an unparalleled open world. And then with Metal Gear Solid 4, it was about the crazy amount of like small details in the game, how there's like, for instance, there's cutscenes in that game where you can play as a little robot that like adventures around during the cutscene. Like the cutscenes, like there's characters move, because all the cutscenes are rendered in game. So like, you know, that room exists. They have created this space and the characters are moving around this space. So you can also move around this space and like watch different angles on what's going on. And like, that shit was fucking mind-blowing at the time. It kind of still is mind-blowing because no one else has really done it. Like, I think Hideo Kojima is someone who truly, like, with each of his games tries to do, like, everything that this new hardware allows for. You know, he's, like, constantly pushing boundaries on, like, what is possible now that you're on Blu-ray, now that you can preload an entire level and, like, have all this insane amount of detail. So, to me, I feel like for a lot of the PS3's lifespan, I was just sitting back being blown away by what was possible. Like, I wasn't really playing the games. I was just looking at these, like, Metal Gear Solid and going, how the fuck? And, like, with Revengeance, you know, what we eventually got in the game, while it is a really fun, cool action game, like, what they were demoing of it was this ability to cut everything. Like, that you could have precision cuts with the sword, and you could cut, and, like, everything would react. Like, they would show this clip of, you know, him cutting up a watermelon into, like, specific slices and all that. And that was like, how is this possible? How can there be the render? And, like, I kind of take that shit for granted now, because I saw it 10 years ago. So now if it happens on a PS4 game, I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. You know, yeah, of course I should be able to cut that into 1,000 pieces that are each individually able to move and have their own physics engine after being cut. Like, why wouldn't that be the case? But, like, 10 years ago, that was fucking insane, you know?
I still think that I can't wrap my head around whether that stuff like that should be possible. Like yeah. the physics of games have, like, improved so much, and yet, if I play a game, I still assume that some things aren't breakable because that's how it's always been. There are boxes that are breakable, and there are things that you just can't interact with. But sometimes you just can, and it's just surprising. I have all the Metal Gear Solid games. I have Metal Gear Solid 1 on PS1, and I have the HD collection, which has 2, 3, and Peace Walker, and I have Metal Gear Solid 4 and Revengeance. I haven't played any of them because it was like my brothers, they got them, because it was a shared console, so shit. I got a lot of Metal Gear to do. It's good that I have that.
I also think that the PS3 was the console generation where things got complicated because they started re-releasing everything. Like, first of all,
HD things?
HD collections. So we got, like, you know, but, like, there'd be multiple versions of HD and special editions. And, like you got Devil May Cry 4 that came out on PS3, Xbox 360. And then they released, like, a special edition, which was on both of those and PC. Then there was, like, the Devil May Cry HD collection, but then also there was, like, a 3 remaster. I don't know. There's, like, a lot of different versions of the Devil May Cry games.
I think, like, everything that is terrible about the way games are made and sold now started with this generation.
I don't even know if they're bad. They're just like
well,
the Metal Gear.
The fact that there's like, you know, there's like a special edition and a deluxe edition and an ultra edition, and they have pre-order bonuses like that. Originated from the idea of selling a game in different ways, having special versions.
Like, those are definitely bad. All the, like, super special editions, like, pay, like, $80 for Resistance, and you get a fucking toy and, like, a DLC, and who the fuck cares?
It used to be that, like, on PS2, you had a Platinum version, and the only reason it had that was so you knew it was a bestseller. It was like a proof that it was a really good game, and you should buy it. That was all it did. And now...
And to put it back on the shelves too, you know, to like restock it in this new way, because eventually the Platinum Edition would be the only one. It wasn't like there was 2 different versions floating around usually, but like, all the pre-order bonus and the special edition shit and the day one DLCs and all that's all horrible, and that all really started in this gen. But like, everyone's talked about that. I don't want to get too into it. Like, you know, every games commenter. What I'm talking about though,
I was just gonna bring up Heavy Rain, the best game on the entire console.
Oh God, no!
Have you played that
in a second? Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But I'm talking more about how it got to a point where I'm never sure what version I should buy to like have the best version of the games. Like Metal Gear Solid, there was like a release of the first 3 games, like an HD collection, and then there's also like a release of the side games, but then I think there's also one that has all 3 and the side games. I'm not sure. Like, I've seen just a lot of different floating around, and like then you've got all the games that are like Vita ports, like Akiba Strip, for instance, is like it's just a PS Vita game that's also on the PS3, and like then you have to ask like, well, okay, which one's better of those, or like, you know, all these games that get ported back and forth between all these different fucking consoles, and then you got games that are for sale online, and it just got so complicated that for me, like, just buying a video game, as soon as it becomes, like, hard to know which one I'm supposed to buy, I kind of give up. Especially if both versions have different advantages, that's where I really go, like, alright, fuck off, you know?
But there's just too many games now. There's too many versions of games, there's too many games, too many different ports. I just want a device that I can put a CD in and blend it into a pill and eat it and get the whole experience instantly. That's the future. That's what I want. I don't have time to experience all these masterpieces. All these Metal Gear Solid games are completely unplayed, and I know they're going to be great. I don't have the time.
So Heavy Rain.
Heavy Rain.
I feel like in every medium there are these moments where something comes out and it's like critically acclaimed and beloved by a lot of people, like because it's impressive in some way, but then as soon as people start thinking about it for like 5 seconds, it completely breaks apart and becomes the stupidest shit in the world. And that's Heavy Rain. Because when that game came out, I knew people in real life who thought it was the greatest game of all time.
It's like, The Last of Us of the PS3. But
The Last of Us was on the PS3.
Oh.
And The Last of Us is actually...
That makes it the funny meme, then.
For what it's worth, The Last of Us is a great game.
True. But it's the same sort of, like, instant everyone loves it suddenly. Yeah. I mean, I get it with The Last of Us, but it feels like, you know,
they're similar
initially...
They are like definitely similar in that both of them are, like, pushing narrative... in a big way, like because with
this
Heavy
is such
Rain,
a cinematic experience. It's like it's like a story.
And with Heavy Rain, it was that like it was so graphically impressive. Like the characters could emote in ways that they hadn't before.
Sean!
It felt like you were playing a movie or something. But like when you actually, if you look at it not expecting it to be good, then it totally changes. Like, I think people played it in a straightforward way because they're thinking like, oh, this is a fucking deep, immersive experience and all the reviews are good, I gotta try. If you go back and play it as a joke, it is the funniest fucking game in the world. It is the funniest
I don't think
shit.
I ever played it seriously. Like, I had it, I don't know who it was like a gift for, but it was just there, and me and my brothers would sit there, and I would start to press X, but then let go, and then he would almost...
That's exactly what we did. It's so fucking
He never
funny.
could open that fucking door.
Oh, it was same exact. I know exactly what moment you're talking about because me and my friends did the same thing for like 5 minutes, just losing our shit. Because it's like, this is a game that will put you in like a tense action scene, but then allow you to just fuck around.
Yeah,
and it doesn't make any sense.
It's really the same. It's like in a Half-Life game, Half-Life 2, where there's a cutscene going on and people are talking to you, but you can pick up things and throw them in their face and dance all over the table. Except in that, it feels like a bit of more of a video game. In this, it's supposed to be a movie where this guy has all these cutscenes. It's very sad and very atmospheric and it's so serious. And then you could just run around in a circle shouting "Jason" for 10 minutes. Not progressing because you don't need to.
Have you ever seen, maybe I showed you this, or maybe you showed me this, who knows, the glitch at the end of the game?
The end.
What was the kid's name?
Sean. Just shout.
Sean, yeah. Look up Sean glitch, everybody, please. Look up Heavy Rain Sean glitch. It is the funniest clip of a video game I've ever seen.
It's. I'll explain it just in case you already know or don't know and you don't care. But like, it's a glitch where there's a button you press to scream your child's name, which is funny on its own. But then the glitch is that you can just keep pressing it during the next cutscene, which is at the climactic final battle of the game. So
and it's like 7 minutes long.
Yeah, he interrupts stuff he says. He just screams over the other person, and it's funny because his mouth moves with it, like it's like programmed for him to actually scream it, and his face.
Yeah, so throughout the whole cutscene, he's just screaming, "Sean, Sean, Sean!" And the other thing is that the whole thing is rendered in game.
Yeah.
And so there's like technology to account for the distance between characters, which is kind of impressive, but the hilarious result of this is that like he sounds farther away if he's farther away.
Yeah, if
so you hear this voice way in the distance going, "Sean."
Like if he's in the background or like far away from it, and it's like a shot of another character, you just keep pressing the button in the distance. Yeah.
Which also leads to, it actually makes it even more surprising at the end of the scene. If you haven't already clicked away to go watch this, do that now before I spoil this. But at the end of the scene, he like surprise shows up to take out the bad guy. But like what's particularly shocking is that up until that moment, his voice is still far away, and then suddenly it's right up close because he's actually there. So like obviously they just had his character model like disappear and reappear there at that point in the scene. I don't know why they left him. Like, why throughout the whole scene is his model still over there in the distance, until this moment where he's suddenly in the scene again. Oh, man. There's so much to break down about that clip. It's so fucking good.
It's indicative of the PS3 to me, that bit. Like, the whole seriousness and the goofy laughing at it. There's one other franchise that is already kind of died through overuse, Assassin's Creed.
I was going to bring that up too, because that was a really big deal at the start of the PS3. I would say that was one of those early games that was like, this was... Because the major PS3 franchises were sort of... we had Uncharted, which was an exclusive. And I feel like that only really got popular when the second game came out. Partly because the first one was like a launch title, and I don't think enough people had a PS3 yet to care about it. Like, it reviewed super well, but like Uncharted 2 was where it became like a big game series everybody was talking about.
I saw a lot more like billboards of Uncharted 2 just around.
And it was even higher like reviews and everything. Like, a lot of people consider it the best game in the series. So yeah, like Uncharted shows up in a big way, and then we had like the Call of Duty games, multi-platform but really successful, and the Assassin's Creed games, and like that's what I remember as like the super big shit in the early era. And I never played any of the Assassin's Creed games, but everyone I knew told me the second game was like my friends were pretty into it, like, before it became a big meme, like, that it's this huge normie franchise that comes out every single year and everyone in the world plays it. Like, initially, people did just really like the game, and
Yeah.
the second one supposedly had, like, one of the best stories in a AAA game at the time. Like, it had really likable characters and, like, a deep plot. I don't know, did you play them at all?
Yeah, I played Assassin's Creed 2 and 3. Assassin's Creed 2 was great. Ezio Auditore is like the suave Italian main character. The whole conceit of it being in a simulation, I never liked. It was retarded, and I hated Desmond, the actual guy. Playing as an assassin is cool, and I liked that, and that game was cool. The third game, you were like a Native American or something, and you were running on trees, and it was just not as fun as running around a really elaborate Italian city.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, that sucked. And also, I didn't really like it that you were killing redcoats, because that's my people. That's me.
Yeah, I can see how that could be upsetting. Because there's no necessarily reason for, like, you to think that your country was on the wrong side of history there, is there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't, like, dislike it, like, as a concept. Like, I don't think... It's just weird to have that be, like, in a big game. It's like being a Russian and having a Call of Duty game come out, and all the bad, horrible people are Russians, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
fuck
I
you,
mean,
Americans, scum.
Because it's funny, because everyone always says that, like, World War II will always be the most popular because there was a clear bad guy. And, like, I think even for Germans, they love killing Nazis. Yeah. You know, like, it's not weird for them. But, like, in a situation like the Revolutionary War, it's like, well, it's not like the Britons were, like, the bad guys here. You know, like, it was just a war. Like, so to be mass murdering English people, like, on principle of them being English might be a little weird.
Yeah. When it was announced, I was like, oh yeah, I guess we're the bad guys this time. Yeah. I don't like it. I hate it. I don't want to play this one. And it also just turns out that the game itself, that the environments were just boring. I don't like the idea of running on trees. I mean, the climbing in Assassin's Creed always reminded me of stuff like Prince of Persia on PS2, where it was like ledges and jumping and platforming puzzles, like going from one to the other. Not so much about knowing how far your jump goes, or like Tomb Raider. You know, it's about getting to the right ledge and going around the corner and jumping at the right moment and swinging on the right vine. And you know, it's fun in that way, but you know, the franchise in general with the platforming and the assassination. Although I never liked the whole try and lay low and don't get the guys shooting you, and it was good. Assassin's Creed 2 at least. They didn't need to. They made like 3 games in the Assassin's Creed 2 like timeline, like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and Assassin's Creed Revelations were with that same Ezio character because he was the only good one. And then Assassin's Creed 3, 4, 5, I don't know, they all suck.
I've been scrolling through a list of literally every PS3 game while we've been talking, and there are so many fucking games on this console. It's like insane. Like, so many that were a big deal. And I don't know if it's just that, like, the culture of gaming was different in this time, that, like, there's more games that were made a big deal of, or, like, that there was an expectation for there to be more AAA...
Well,
because I'm thinking about any other console, and I feel like there's, like, you can name, like, the top 20 big games that everyone cared about.
I think it must have been the internet, because...
Yeah.
You know, before it was like, if it's not on TV and your friends weren't talking about it in the playground, you'd never hear of it. You'd never hear about it. There's hundreds of PlayStation 2 games I've never even heard of that are like cult classics. PlayStation 3, it was the YouTube boom. You know, everyone was making Let's Plays mostly about Call of Duty and stuff. There were growing channels around gaming. And it was cool to talk about stuff like that and to learn about the new hot game that was coming out.
Yeah. I think part of it also is that, like, we haven't sussed out, like, the wheat from the chaff quite yet. Like, what games are going to be remembered from this console generation. Because, like, you can go, like, Google, you know, top 20 Super Nintendo games, and they're gonna be the same fucking games on every list. Because, like, over time, certain stuff has risen to the top, and, like, everyone remembers it. Like, you'll never see that list without Chrono Trigger in the top 5. It's not gonna happen. I don't think you could possibly make a top 10 PS3 games like list and have two people have like all the same games in their list. It's not gonna happen because we haven't like it hasn't been enough time, you know, and because every game had a big deal made out of it, it's hard to say like what stuff was the shit that like everyone's cares about, you know.
Yeah, I mean it really comes. How many years was the SNES around though?
A good like 6 years, I want to say.
Okay, so it's not that much less.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, like, over time that stuff gets taught. Like, every year, Game FAQs has a, you know, game of best game of all time. Well, not every year, but, like, every other year. They do a best game of all time thing, you know? And, like, when you see Ocarina of Time and Final Fantasy VII make it to the top of that list every single year, it's like, well, gee, I wonder what the best game on the N64 and PS1 are. But you'll never see that with this next generation because, like, or if we do, it'll be 5, 10, 15 years from now when, you know, enough people don't care about Ocarina of Time anymore and something else can win the #1 spot.
When Shade is a jaded, bitter, cynical gamer guy,
yeah.
When he's looking back and he hates all the stuff that's coming out now, that's the generation that'll be making lists about PS3 games.
So all right, let me I'm just going to scroll through this massive amount of games tabs I've opened up. Because a lot of these, so many of these are games that, again, were made a big deal out of when they came out, but I don't know if anybody will care. For instance, Batman Arkham Asylum. So
people have talked about that a lot, but I keep getting it confused with every other Batman Arkham Asylum version of
there's
sequels.
Like 8 games
I don't
now.
know.
And it's because the first one, again, it sold well, it reviewed well, they made 20 sequels, and nobody cares about it anymore. And like,
is it just like Batman God of War? Is that what it is?
No, it's more like Assassin's Creed. It's basically like, it's identical to Assassin's Creed. Let's just put it that way.
All right.
But, like, I played the game probably a year and a half after it came out. I got, like, 5 hours in and was like, okay, this game fucking blows. Like, I don't care about it at all. And, like, it's a very of-its-time game. It's the same kind of game that was big, you know, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Batman. Like, these are all games that were, like, just what was popular at the time. But, like, will these be remembered in 10 years? I don't know, you know? Battlefield
Red Dead
games,
Redemption. I think Red Dead Redemption will be remembered as a really good one.
I think that'll hold because that's one that like the more time passes, the more I see people praising it. Like, man, that really was my favorite game. You know, like
it felt like a big hype thing at the time, but it's still cool.
Yeah, it's still hanging on people's subconscious. That and like a Fallout like 3 in New Vegas.
Yeah,
you know, like,
I think of those as PC games,
highly.
But yeah. It's the same generation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these are on multiple consoles. Bayonetta came out in this era, which is now a Nintendo franchise somehow. But,
it didn't used to be.
Yeah, no, it was originally only on 360 and PS3, and the PS3 version was actually worse. This is one of the few cases because it was made as a 360 game, and then they had Sega make a port for the PS3. And they did a shit job, like, and then so the PS3 version was worse, and then there was the Wii U version, which like fixed the problems with it, and it's like the best version.
It's weird that, like, to me, Bayonetta, it feels weird knowing that she wasn't a Nintendo character now. I don't know how long has it been since that was like confirmed as a thing.
3 years, because it was just because Bayonetta 2 was a Wii U game, and so
I just associate her with Samus all the time in my head.
Yeah. We have another huge franchise from this era, BioShock, though that started as a 360 exclusive, so might be better to talk about that in 360. BlazBlue, big fighting game that started in this gen, which is from the guys who make Guilty Gear. this was like their next gen console fighter. It's fun. I'm just looking at all these games. Catherine was a PS3. Well, it's on PS3 and Xbox 360. Pretty cool Atlas game, sort of a cult classic that has probably the weirdest competitive scene that exists because it's a puzzle platformer game that has a competitive scene. Don't know how that happened. Oh, God. Oh, Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax, which is a PS3 exclusive and is like one of my favorite PS3 games. Very late in the lifespan of the console.
I think we were talking about like compilations earlier. I forgot to bring up Kingdom Hearts HD Remix. They actually do a decent job of compiling the Kingdom Hearts games into like a single disc.
Yeah.
Like that's so confusing over so many different consoles, but like they've got like the HD Remix 1 and 2, or like 1.5 and 2.5, and then another one with like more, and then the Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out at some point. I appreciate this, despite the ridiculous names they give these things, the way they've compartmentalized it into a kind of understandable set of games on PS3 at least.
Yeah. I'm going through it. It's amazing how many like franchises there were that like carried over from the PS2 and got worse, or that have now carried on into the PS4, or were just all over the place. You know, like there were a lot of franchises that did emerge, but they were also similar. Like again, Assassin's Creed, Batman Arkham, and like Far Cry had already existed, but like they were all so similar that in my mind it's like hard to think of them as like, those were three distinct franchises. Mass Effect did start here, but it was originally only on the 360 and PC, and then it only 2 and 3 were on the PS3 as well, and then they made a Mass Effect trilogy release that had all of them. But I don't know, it's hard to tie that to any one console, but I think it would be better suited to talk about on the 360 or PC. But Dead Space came from this gen. Pretty fun over-the-shoulder shooter horror game.
Like any over-the-shoulder shooter games and things like Batman Arkham Asylum that weren't Assassin's Creed. Like, so many games like that. Far Cry, like, I'd never played them. I'd never really been interested in them.
Yeah.
I just don't like guns. Except with Fallout for some reason. Fallout's good. I think Fallout
is not really a shooter game per se. It's more of an RPG.
Yeah, it's like you can shoot things from far distances, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I hate cover-based shooters.
Yeah,
I don't like them.
There's also a lot of games in here that I just don't really associate with this console. Like I just passed a Rune Factory game that was on the PS3, and it's like Rune Factory is a DS franchise. Like I can't think of it as, and it's never like it's not a game that like people probably don't really care about the PS3 version. I remember a friend of mine played it and it wasn't very good. You know, like it's better as a DS game, so like let's not even think of it this way. There's just so much mixing happened this gen. Everything had to be everywhere. You know, and I think that weakened it. You don't have that sense of identity that the old consoles had.
It's a double-edged sword because, like, you lose the identity of the console, but it's better for everyone if a game can be played. Like the idea of like playing a PS1 game on the PC back when PS1 was a console, you wouldn't even consider that because computers just weren't very good. I mean, they probably could run that sort of stuff, but it was just like you wouldn't even think of like playing a game on a PC like that. The technology was so different. At least it felt like. But now it seems kind of like a slap in the face if a game is exclusively on a console, because I don't want to have to buy it. I'd rather just be able to get it wherever I have a thing to play it on.
I think oh shit, I lost track of what I was about to say. Continue.
I'll talk about Mod Nation Racers, the best racing game ever made.
Never even heard of that.
It's so bad. I think Devu hates it. It's a game where you're supposed to like build the racing kart place, but it's really boring and the driving is terrible. And the only thing I remember doing was making Sanji from One Piece in the character creation screen because it had a kind of pretty good customizable character thing, but that's it. Like the driving sucked. If you played the thing was, I think my little brother was really hype about it for some reason. Like, it was just a really big news. Like, oh, you can make your own racetracks, and it looks really good. And it's like 10 times worse than Little Big Planet in terms of building stuff. It was just terrible.
All right, I've finished going through the list of all the PS3 games. Another thing that happened this gen is like a lot of franchises felt like they were just paying homage to an older franchise. Like, you have the Dishonored games, and like, I don't know, I guess for a lot of people that was like a big IP, but to me, like, all I ever heard about Dishonored is, oh, it's just Thief. You know, it's like, oh, it's like a Thief fan game or something essentially.
Something about the like, I didn't even know about Thief, but as soon as I saw Dishonored, something about it was just, it looked like a sequel.
Yeah, it's like this doesn't feel new.
I don't know how. It doesn't, not even like I've seen the first, like, what it's based on. It just feels like it's part 2 of something. I don't know why.
There's also the unfortunate bastardization of formerly great franchises, such as DMC Devil May Cry, where they took something everyone loved and just kind of ruined it. But I'm gonna go through here and like, Skyrim came out this gen. You know, it's a game.
Yeah, it's a game.
We got Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Everybody loves New Vegas or 3. Everyone's got a favorite between those two, I think, except for me, because I haven't played either of them.
Everyone likes New Vegas because it wasn't made by Bethesda. It was made by Obsidian, and they're much better at crafting an actual believable world. Like I've always been waiting for Fallout 4 to have a spin-off game called Fallout Newer Vegas or something to that description, made by a different company, because Bethesda is just not that good. They can make a big old map, but they can't do anything with it. That's why Skyrim isn't interesting. That's why Fallout 4 sucks, and Fallout 3 is kind of weird. But Fallout New Vegas is, like, perfect. Obsidian is a great game company.
Here's a game franchise that I think should have become, like, a big deal, and everyone should have ended up loving it, except they fucked up the games, and that's why this didn't happen, which is Lost Planet. You ever play that?
Is that about dinosaurs?
No. Well, not quite. It's a third-person shooter game where you're on, like, an ice planet, and you move really slow, and it's like this, like, heavy, weighty, arcade-style shooter game that's hard as fuck, made by Capcom. And, it was, I think, in this early, because it came out in, like, early in this, console generation, and it's one of the games that they updated it to modern graphics and everything, but this was before, like, every game had the same control scheme or the same layout. Like, before it was everything's a fucking open world beat 'em up and or over the shoulder shooter, which is what eventually happened to this gen. So the controls are different. It's a different kind of game, and it's pretty cool, but Lost Planet 2 was like a barely functional clusterfuck. And, like, I think they made 3. The third one was like a co-op focused game, and it basically became Dead Space. Like, they just turned it into Dead Space. But, like, the first game was a really unique and different experience. While it wasn't, like, a perfect game, I think that if Lost Planet 2 had been a better game than 1, then it could have been, like, one of the big franchises of that generation. But they shat the bed.
Looking at, I Googled it, I wouldn't have thought this was something interesting by the it's just a guy. That's another thing that started happening, wasn't it? Like, every single cover of every single game was the same thing for a while. It used to be a guy standing, looking at the thing in mostly silhouette with a color behind him and the title. And I was like, for years, the cover.
It's the problem.
Games
got too homogenized in this generation. But I've gone through all these PS3 games and I've narrowed it down to the ones that really stood out as something different and interesting. That I think, and a lot of these unfortunately did not become franchises, I think because they were too different and interesting. First of all, Dragon's Dogma. Have you played this game yet?
No. Is that where you climb up the side of them?
Yes. You need to play this game. I think you'll like it a lot. Especially, it's on PC now. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. It's a huge, like, it's sort of an open world RPG, action RPG, that's like, if you combined the Elder Scrolls with Dark Souls, like if you found a middle point between those two, like it's open world like an Elder Scrolls game, but the combat is like a Dark Souls game, where it's much more strategic, and you know, like there's dodge rolling, and you climb up enemies. And
I feel like skeptical every time people tell me it's just like Dark Souls combat. Is it actually? Have you played it? Would you
I've
be able
watched
to say?
a lot of people. I mean, it's not just like Dark Souls combat. It doesn't have that level of like precision. It's more
there's something.
The battles are
something
longer.
So it's like people say Monster Hunter is kind of like that sort of Dark Soulsian like strategic combat.
Yeah.
But I have played Monster Hunter a bit, and it's just not. It's not I can't have it if it's just a little bit like it, or
Dragon's
halfway
Dogma
there.
in the halfway point between the combat of Monster Hunter and the combat of Dark Souls. Like,
Okay, so it's closer.
yeah, it's not as tactical as Dark Souls. The game is hard as fuck, but like it's more about you'll have like all these NPCs that you like hire to work with you, who you can customize. There's all kinds of crazy shit in this game. Like it's an insanely deep, like mechanically game, but you bring your party and you'll fight like a huge fuck off monster in the middle of a field somewhere, and you'll be fighting it for like 15 minutes because everything has a giant life bar, and you'll have to use like just every single trick in your book, like throwing all these spells at it. There's like, for instance, your ultimate spell, if you are a sword, you can literally become Guts in this game from Berserk. You can put on Guts' armor from Berserk and have the giant sword. And if you have like your final attack with that sword, it's an attack where you lift your sword above your head and you literally charge up for like 30 seconds before you launch this attack that just like destroys everything. And like, you know, you have to tactically be not getting yourself killed and using all your guys while you're charging up this attack. It's a very frantic game. There's a lot going on, you know.
All right.
But it's really cool.
It does sound interesting. I'm not sure whether I would like it, but I'll try it eventually. It's just that the thing I like about Dark Souls combat is you can, if you want, like there's so much to it. There is a lot of things you can do, and it can be very frantic. But if you want, or you can just have a sword and a shield.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a metal stick that's sharp, and I'm just gonna go and kill everything.
Drag Dog's not a
having
game
loads
you
of
could... party
party members and variable equipment. It gets a bit confusing sometimes for me, and I don't like that. But
I would say this could get
it's
confusing.
Okay.
It's definitely not a game you can just like pick up and play the way you can Dark Souls. It's more of a like, I'm gonna play this game for the next couple of weeks and get really into it. It's heavily like Dungeons and Dragons inspired, and like the monsters and everything. It's really neat though, man. It's got, I would say it does the like swords and sorcery fantasy in like a more concrete way than like any other game I can think of. You know, it feels more like what you imagine a D&D campaign being than any other game. Anyway, yeah, that's a cool game. Dragon's Crown, also another dragon game. This one was a side-scrolling beat-em-up from the people who made fucking Odin Sphere, which was also re-released on, well, that was on the PS4, so never mind. It's a cool beat. I never actually got to play this one, but it looks fucking dope as shit. Here's a fucking weird one I know you've never heard of. El Shaddai. This was like this fucking bizarre...
Is that spoiling Death Note? Is that what it's doing?
No, El Shaddai is like a really weird, esoteric kind of art game that I don't even quite understand it. I don't know if I would call it good, but it's so fucking weird that it deserves to be played. And you could probably buy it for like $5. Action RPGs, Eternal Sonata, Folklore, which I've wanted to play. I own it, but I haven't really gotten into it. That was an early PS3 title that nobody paid attention to. Did you ever play Heavenly Sword?
Nope.
That was one of the PS3 launch titles that was like... Heavenly Sword is like God of War, but the main character is a girl, and the game is like much like it tries to be like that cinematic action game where there's like a lot of emphasis on the story and cutscenes and stuff like that. But like it's by Ninja Theory, and all their games are fucking weird. All of them have like really weird storylines. that are like they go they go all in on the cinematic nature of it, but they're all trying to be like more artsy films with like really different characters and stuff like that. The Last of Us. Did you play The Last of Us?
I don't think so, actually. Well, I played it, I think a bit of it, but I mostly watched my little brother play it. I don't know whether he beat it. It was kind of good. It just looked a bit difficult with the clicky monsters.
Oh, this game was easy as fuck, dude. I played my run of The Last of Us was like I played it on like hard mode, and I would mostly kill people with my fists until late in the game. Like I would just run in and beat the shit out of everybody.
Are the giraffes at the end? Because I may have seen him beat the game.
Yeah, that's towards the end.
Yeah.
The Last of Us was cool. I think that this game, I think why The Last of Us was as popular as it was, is that it basically took all of the wisdom of all these games that had been coming out and just, like, did it perfectly. You know? Like, they did everyone likes cover shooters. That's what's been the big deal for the last 10 years. So, like, let's take the cover shooter mechanics and the same basic shit that every game has and just, like, deliver a good story on top of it and, like, not fuck it up in any way. And that's why everyone loves it so much. But, like, it is basically just exactly the same game as everything else. But, you know, they did a good job. Shadows of the Damned, which Victor's playing on the Vic and Hope plays right now. The Suda51 game. Suda51 had a couple. South Park: The Stick of Truth. I never played that. Did you play that? No.
Nah.
Spec Ops: The Line. Everyone made a big deal about because it was like.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't know, like a deconstruction.
It was supposed to look like a basic military shooter, like all the other games, but it's got deep shit in it.
Yeah.
It makes you think. You kill people.
Did you ever play a game called Tokyo Jungle?
Is that where you are in Japan and you are an animal and you have to survive?
Yes.
I've seen that. Haven't played it.
Pretty unique. I don't know if it had to be a PS3 game. It's one of those that probably could have just been a PSP game, but it's cool. It's just about animals murdering each other.
It always feels weird when there's like a small game, like a game that you could see being on like a PSP or being on some other console, that it didn't have to be the big old blockbuster that every other game was.
Again, I think that's why they couldn't, like, those games should have been all over the console, but like they just didn't. Like, I think because it's looked weird. You know, it's like it's hard to put that up next to these other games, and that's why all those games went to like the DS and the Wii. And the 360. 360 had a lot of like middle tier games compared to the PS3.
I mean, they had like big store like sections where it's like it's not advertised, but you can download it on the PS3. All these little games. Yeah. But I've always felt weird about that. I don't know why. It's just like every game on the PS2 that I was aware of really was like a big game, because I wasn't exposed to the games that sucked really.
Yeah.
And then anything small was like it would be on the GBA or a handheld thing. So it's weird to have a console with a small game on it.
We were talking about before how I think we both think Red Dead Redemption will sort of be remembered as like the open world game that like is the highest regarded in the future. I think like for that'll be true of like that type of open world, but for the other type that's like Infamous and that one with the superheroes that you run around and shit, like that type of open world game, like the big city open world where you're climbing on buildings and like Assassin's Creed type games, I think the one that'll be remembered as the best on the long run will be Prototype. And I never played Prototype myself, and at the time, I just thought of it as being the exact same thing as Infamous. Like, they were stunningly similar, and everyone made fun of that fact. But, like, Prototype 2, particularly, is the one that I still see popping up on people's favorite games list, and, like, that 4chan respects. And usually if 4chan respects a game, that usually means it's one that's going to survive a little longer, because they're fucking pretentious. But, yeah, I think Prototype will probably survive. Even though it only had 2 games, it wasn't as big of a franchise as a lot of the other ones. But it seems to be remembered well. And to wrap up...
I've never heard of it.
To wrap up the... it's an extremely violent game, where you, like, just... Did you ever play the Hulk Ultimate Destruction? Like,
I played a Hulk game, but yeah.
where you run around and break shit constantly.
Yeah.
Prototype was made by the
get
same people, and it's basically the same game. Like, you just run around. You're basically like a fucking weird monster with superpowers, and you just wreck shit all over town.
Like a Grim Reaper.
If you have any other PS3 games you want to bring up, now's the time, because I've got one last one to close us off.
Well, there's Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, which is a pretty cool concept, but it was made by a different studio than made the first 3 Sly Cooper games, and I don't know, I just don't remember it very fondly. But I don't know whether that was down to childhood nostalgia or not. But I don't know. They did a good job, but it just wasn't that fun, and the writing wasn't very good. I don't really have any like specific big games left to talk about. Yeah. So yeah, you can just go ahead.
Well, the last one I want to bring up is probably the most ill-considered game on the PlayStation 3. One that sounded like a good idea, but was actually a terrible idea. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
Oh my god. Jesus Christ, what did they fucking do? They had so many IPs that could have been like great fighting game characters, and they made the worst fighting game imaginable.
Yeah. I mean, they got Ratchet, they got Sly Cooper, they got fucking Kratos, they got Drake, they got fucking Metal Gear Rising, what's his fucking name? Raiden, Big Daddy. These are good ideas. They made a game that no one understands. They should have had
Crash and Spyro in there as well, but I don't know whether they even had those at the time.
They obviously should have had them, and also like Jack. I don't see him on the cover.
They could have had Rayman in there. That would have been like a huge thing.
I mean, at this point, Rayman was more of a Nintendo boy, I think. Because I saw, well, I mean, I guess Rayman Legends was on everything. But, But wait,
like, they could have had Assassin's Creed. Did they even have that?
No, that was on all consoles. I think they were only doing first-party games, or games that were, like, exclusive to Sony. But they made a game that no one understood how to... It's the least satisfying fighting game of all time. Because I
still don't get it.
I think what they were trying to do is they said, well, like, you know, Super Smash Brothers isn't just a normal fighting game. It's got, like, a percentage system, and you knock people out. And so we're going to do something kind of like that, except not. And, like, the satisfaction of Smash is when you knock someone off screen and they die, which you can't do in this game. I don't even know how you win. Like, I've had it explained to me like 10 times and I still don't get it.
I remember, I still haven't played it because it looked like shit. But I watched the Game Grumps play it, and I think at some point they figured out you have to you get the enemy to a certain percentage or life or whatever, and then you have to use a special attack to kill them.
You have to use a super.
Which is the worst thing. The thing I hate about most games
Fighting
in general
games,
is well, I mean, a specific game in like a Naruto Ultimate Ninja 2, where to complete the mission, you have to beat a really difficult enemy with a very difficult to perform special attack. Otherwise, you lose and have to redo it all over again. And it's stuff like that. There's just like I hate combos. It's the worst. It's like Mortal Kombat did it fine, where it's just like a little bonus at the end. To actually win by doing that is annoying.
I feel like they couldn't have fucked up that game more than they did. There's no way you could have fucked that up worse.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's a terrible game.
I really think... I mean, I think they could salvage it if they did it again for the PS4 and just made it Smash, but with characters that you couldn't have in Smash. But now that the Nintendo has Cloud, what the fuck can they do? The fuck are they gonna do? They're dead.
Yeah.
Sony's dead. It's a zombie.
Yeah. Well, so I'd say that the overall, my impressions of the PS3 is that this was a console that had a shitload of good games, but most of them were multi-platform, and a lot of them had no real identity. We had a lot of continuing franchises that got worse, new franchises that felt just like other new franchises or just like other old franchises. Just lots of games that were highly regarded when they came out and nobody cares about them 5 years later. And I'm really left wondering, like, which games are going to be the ones that people actually still care about in the future. You know, like, most of the ones that I'm going to care about are probably the ones that weren't that popular, stuff that went a little under the radar. But then we also had the Souls series, which Demon Souls is a PS3 exclusive, and that is the only reason I get out my PS3 still.
That same. Like, I still haven't beaten Demon Souls. I got right to the last boss. He kept stealing my levels, and I was like, oh,
yeah, that
fuck.
guy's a fucking pain in the ass.
But that is, like, the reason to buy a PS3 is Demon Souls. The reason to buy a PS4 is Bloodborne.
Yeah.
The Souls games are the best. I want to see From Software Smash. I want to see them in a 2D fighting game where they jump around like Super Smash Brothers, but like you have Bloodborne over here, and you have Demon Souls over there. You got Oscar from Dark Souls 1.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'd do that.
You have a little Capra Demon character.
Oh, that would be awesome. Capra Demon, Ornstein, Onion Knight, Sunbro.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's way more characters than I even considered. It's definitely doable.
Artorias.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Little Sif.
I want it. I'd do it. You could do it with just Dark Souls. You don't even need the other games, but you'd want them. All right. Well, what console do you think we should do on the next episode? Should we break away from the 7th gen? Because I don't know if you even had a 360, did you?
I never had a 360. I don't even think I knew a friend who had... I mean, they probably had the 360. I just never went to their house to see it.
Right.
I guess another Nintendo console or something. Maybe a handheld.
Oh, yeah. You want to do... Well, our options, we can do the DS or the GBA or the Game Boy Color. Which one would you rather do?
I don't have really any history with the Game Boy Color aside from, or the original Game Boy, aside from like Pokemon Blue, and that was just like temporarily, and then I got GBA. So I guess GBA is a good one.
All right, GBA is my fucking area of expertise, so I'll be well prepared for that. And we'll see you then, guys. Peace out.
Goodbye. Is a Game Boy is we're gay.